Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about personalized gameful design, which was the main topic of my PhD research. And I have been studying this topic for the past 5 years. And I want to bring to you first some examples of how personalized gamification is being done by myself, but other people as well. And then a very short introduction about how I have been doing it and how you can do it as well. So first of all, what is personalized gameful design? So what am I talking about? So I'm talking about the tailoring of the gameful design elements to boost the achievement of the goals of the gameful system. So of course, when you're gamifying something, you have a goal, you want to help people achieve their goals. And by tailoring the experience to each person using your gameful system, you can help them achieve these goals. And we basically have two different ways to personalize things. We can either let the users customize their own experience, or we can have the system personalizing the experience to them. So usually in human-computer interaction and technology in general, the word personalization is more used to automatic tailoring, but here I'm using it kind of catch-all word. And when I talk about personalized gamification, it can be either customized by the user or it can be automatic. So let me show you some examples of how I have applied personalized gamification and how other people have done so as well. And as I present these examples, I'm also going to comment on the results that have been published. And so hopefully it will become clear why I have been suggesting that not only I, but other researchers as well have been suggesting that personalizing our designs might be a good idea. Also, you will see from these examples as well, and from the definition I just said, that it's important in this case that we tailor the experience for each person while they're using the system, right? So it's not enough just to survey your users before you design and then trying to design an average solution that everyone will like. Of course, that's an important step as well. But when we talk about personalization here, we go beyond that. It's not only during the design, but also while people are using the system, they need to have some way to tailor the experience. So each user will have a different experience depending how it's tailored to them. So let's move to the examples. So my first example is on quest selection in a gameful course that I taught here at the University of Waterloo. And in this case, I had a bunch of exercises for students to practice what they were learning. It was a business systems analysis course. And what I allowed here for them to personalize is the exact selection of the set of exercises that they will do. I created a bunch of quests, each one of them related to one topic of the course. And I said to them that by the end of the term, they would need to do a certain amount of points, 1,000 points, 2,000 points, depending on what term it was. And then they were allowed to select. So they had this list here. The list presented an estimate of the difficulty, the amount of time they had to complete. And it was very interesting. Some students did only the bare minimum amount of quests that they needed. Some students did them all because they wanted the extra practice. But the important aspect here from the point of view of personalization is that apart from a few required quests that were about the most important topics in the course, they had total freedom to choose which exercises they would do and in which order. And I didn't do a formal study, but I had very good feedback from students at the end of term. They just loved this experience and the freedom they had to choose and the amount of feedback that we gave them on each exercise that they submitted. In another course, I used this complex skill tree to present all the topics, all the things that students had to learn in the course. This is a course that taught them how to build user interfaces in Java. It was a programming course. And from the point of view of personalization, what I want to bring here is that for each one of these skills that they were learning in the course, there were 4 levels in their grading, so they could be graded from 0 to 4 in each one of these skills. And we told them what they needed to do to get to level 3, but to get to level 4, they were free to choose an improvement that they wanted to do, right? So they had a program that they had to write, and we told them, okay, these are some requirements that you need to implement. If you implement all these requirements, you get 75% of your grade, and for the other 25%, you're free to do whatever you want. Just use this skill in any way you want, and we will check it and we will grade it. So also using this idea that I didn't want to tell students exactly what to do. I wanted to give them some flexibility about what they would do. And this GAMEFUL skill tree was a way to communicate with them, to present what they needed to do, and for them to get back to us and said, here's what I did, here's how I'm showing you that I learned what you're teaching in the course. It was an interesting experience as well, but this, what was interesting in this experience is that students are so used to just receiving a specification, checking the boxes, and getting the grade, that some of them found it difficult to think about what to do when they were not just given a fixed list of requirements. So some of them struggled a bit to understand this flexibility. What else can I do to get this extra grade? So that's an interesting reflection here, right? How much we're training students to just check the boxes that we give them, and how much we're training them to actually think about the skills that they're learning and what they can do with those skills, which is exactly what I wanted to highlight here to students. It's not just you're checking this list of requirements that I gave you, but I want you to think about what you're learning in this course, what you can do with that. The next example, and now just a comment, you will see that some of these examples are not about learning, because I'm using all examples that I can find here, since we don't have many examples in the literature about personalized gamification yet, but all are interesting because they all show different aspects of how we can personalize things. And this idea of personalized gamification can be applied to any domain, to learning for sure, but to others as well. So this was the main study that I did for my PhD thesis. We created a simple image tagging platform just to study personalized gamification. So we showed images and we asked people to write as many tags as they could for that image. And you can see we had some GAMEFUL elements here. We had leaderboards, gifts, challenges, badges, avatars, I think. But then for the study of personalized gamification, we had 2 versions of this application. So one of them was just a generic version where all these game elements were activated. And for another version, we let participants customize their experience by just presenting to them this simple list of game elements in the platform, just an icon, a title, and a short description. And we let them choose which one of these game elements they wanted to use. If they didn't want to use an element, they would just not check the box, and then that element would not show in the screen. So, see, very simple. This didn't take me too much time to implement. This took a minute for participants to customize their experience. But in the study that I did, the results were very encouraging. Participants that were able to customize their application were so much more engaged with it that on average, they tagged 90% more images, because they had a total of 100 images available to them, but they didn't have to tag them all. They could choose how many images they will do. And participants who had the choice to customize their application tagged on average 90% more images than the participants that just used the generic version. And also, when we asked about the experience, they rated their experience 33% better. So you see how this very simple customization option that took me just a few hours to implement almost doubled the performance of participants and improved their experience by a third. A similar experiment done by a research group in Germany, they also had a kind of a classification task where they showed participants some documents and asked participants to classify them to say if they were correct. So collection of small tasks. Similar to my experiment, they had a generic version with several gamification elements and another version where participants could customize their experience. And you can see that in the customized version, participants completed 66% more tasks in comparison to the version that had gamification, but it was fixed. It could not be customized. It was interesting also that on average, participants on the customized gamification version completed 120% more tasks compared with the version that did not have gamification at all. So it also shows how gamification made the task more interesting. In another experiment done by that research group, this was very interesting. They just allowed participants to enable or disable gamification. So they had some very simple elements, like points and leaderboards, and the only choice that participants had was enable or disable that. So, and they had a combination. So they had the application with and without gamification, and with and without the choice. And they saw that participants who had gamification had more tags generated no matter if they had the choice or not. So with gamification, participants generated 76% more tags. But what was interesting is that participants who did not have gamification and had the choice to disable gamification, so they didn't have gamification because they choose so, they generated 36% more tags than participants who just didn't have gamification but didn't have the choice. So that's an interesting result because it seems that some people perform better if they just have the choice to disable the gamification elements.
Gustavo,
am I on time already?
You're almost out of, well, actually, you're a minute ahead of time, so if you can start wrapping up, it would be fantastic.
Okay. So I'm going to skip ahead. So in this other example, they created a personalized fitness recommender system that recommended not only what exercises people could do in forms of challenges, but also the game elements. And just wanted to point out here in the charts, for example, the orange and blue are those versions that had personalization. And you can see how personalization really made people do more exercise, which is this chart here, even in comparison with just the gamified but not personalized version, which is yellow. Okay, it's a matter of time, so I'm going to skip ahead some examples. So you see that people have been trying to personalize their experiences in academic studies and checking the results, and they have been very encouraging. The results seem to suggest that the performance and engagement with the applications is really better when we have personalization. So how do we design these personalized gameful systems? I'm sure that's what you're asking. So in my research, I identified 5 different types of personalization that we can do. Maybe there are more, but these are the types that I identified. So we can personalize the activities that people do. So these are the learning activities. If we're doing a learning system, these are the health activities, the fitness activities, the work activities. So it really depends what you're doing. And for this part, of course, you can rely on the knowledge from the domain area. So, of course, people have been studying how to personalize learning activities according to the needs of each learner for years, right? So you can take advantage of all that knowledge if you are creating a personalized gameful learning application. And then we can also just personalize the game elements depending on what kind of gameful activity each person likes, the persuasive strategies, the difficulty according to the skills of each user, and the rewards that we give them. Of course, I don't have a lot of time to talk about each one of them. Each one of them could be a different talk, but I just wanted to talk briefly about how I'm doing personalization of gameful design elements. So I did some research and asking people what they like, and identified that user preferences for game elements can be grouped in 8 different categories. So for each one of these categories, we have a list from 4 to 10 elements that are in each of these categories. And it means that people usually like all the elements in that category or none. So what I have been doing is trying to add at least 1 or 2 elements of each one of these categories in everything that I design. So for example, I create a gameful application. I put these 8 elements that are 1 from each one of these categories. You can see by the different colors. Of course, this is just for the personalization aspect. Of course, you also need to use your favorite gameful design method to decide how this, to choose what game elements you're going to use and how they're going to fit in the experience. But as you're doing that, try to select 1 element from each category. And if you go to my website, Gameful Bits, or if you check our paper, you're going to have the complete list of elements. And then, as I showed, what you can do is once you have at least one element of each category, just give people the choice of what they will use. It can be just something very simple as just telling people what elements they have in your system and which ones they want to use. And that can already increase their performance engagement in the system because they feel that they help build the experience for them. And of course, if you want to do something more complex and if you have the budget, you can also create recommender systems which use all the information that you have about the user to rate with elements, which activities and which rewards would work better for them. And you can create recommender systems. So to finalize, of course, the topic of the conference this year is disruption. And you may have noticed that all of my examples came from academic papers, in part because I am a researcher, and so I have lots of references from academic papers, but also because we have been hearing a lot more about a lot more reports of how people have been doing personalization on academic papers. And I'm sure other people are doing that as well outside of universities, but I know it's harder to publish results because you have NDAs and things like that. But I wanted to propose as a disruption for our field to invite everybody to work more on personalized solutions for the next year and see if we can bring more results about how personalization works in practice, not only in academic settings. For Gamification Europe 2021, let's see if we have more results, right? And I'd be happy to chat more about it and help you if you have ideas about how to apply personalization to your project. And you can also find more resources on my website. So you have more explanations about how I have been doing it. You have explanations about those groups of gameful design elements. And on my company as well, MotiveUX, we can also help you if you want. And we are planning to publish more courses on that. So we really want to help the gamification community to think about how we can improve our designs using more personalized solutions. Thank you very much.